My fiancé became obsessed with his intern secretary and insisted on breaking off our engagement. I kindly advised, "She has a humble background and won't be of much help to your career. It's better for you to settle her somewhere else." The secretary, feeling ashamed, ended her own life on the spot. 5 years later, he became the family heir. And the first thing he did was divorce me, ruining my family. This is the retribution you deserve for what you did to Imogen. When I opened my eyes again, it was my 22nd birthday party. My fiancé's grandfather asked me what my wish was. "I hope Sawyer and Miss Imogen can be happy together for the rest of their lives." I bowed slightly and said, "Please, Grandpa Theodore, grant me permission to break off my engagement with Sawyer." 1. I left this world on a rainy day. I wanted to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the red leaves all over the mountain, but Sawyer couldn't wait any longer. I fell down the stairs, one step at a time, and blood stained the ground. He didn't think it was enough. He pushed me down the stairs with his own hands again and again. It hurt so much that I could barely speak, but I couldn't help but ask, "Why is this happening? I really don't understand." Our two families have always been on good terms, and he and I have been inseparable since we were children. Over the years, my family has done everything possible to help him gain a foothold in the family and become the successor. But he set a trap, causing my father to fall into his trap, and eventually our family fell into decline, and my father passed away as a result. Why Sawyer? I held on tightly to the corner of his clothes, refusing to let go. Sawyer's face was pale and frightening, as if he had been wronged. "This is all the retribution you deserve for what you did to Imogen." He said these words through gritted teeth. Imogen, Imogen. The name made me feel a little strange, until I remembered the soft and pitiful face behind it. I couldn't help but laugh. 5 years have passed. In these 5 years, Sawyer has never forgotten her. It turns out that all his hatred for me stemmed from her death, and also from the resentment towards the entire Jocelyn family business. "Sawyer, you really so stupid." Before the last word could be uttered, he grabbed my neck fiercely. The air in my chest was squeezed out little by little. Blood flowed from the corner of my mouth, as bright as the maple leaves all over the mountain. "Jocelyn, are you still having a headache?" The biting rain disappeared. The solid ground vanished. It was a beautiful autumn day, with guests as numerous as the clouds. This was a banquet held to celebrate my 22nd birthday, and it was also an engagement ceremony with Sawyer. Perhaps even God couldn't bear to see it, and when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back 5 years ago. Not only did I not die, but I also became 22 years old again. That year, the Jocelyn family's business was thriving, and my father successfully made it into the top 10 on the rich list. Also in this year, I was not yet engaged to Sawyer. "Don't have a headache, have you?" A mocking voice came from behind. Yesterday, Sawyer personally admitted that the little secretary was his girlfriend. My good friend was about to go up and question him, but I stopped her in time. Not only that, but he also revealed more. 3 months ago, Sawyer was framed and drugged while doing business in another place, and Imogen stepped forward to save his life. Afterwards, the two quickly fell in love, and Sawyer said he wanted to marry her. This relationship has been reported by the media 3 times. "Jocelyn, don't believe those rumors, your relationship is so good." I glanced at my best friend and shook my head to interrupt her. I knew what my best friend was going to say next. Just a week ago, I woke up again. After a few days of sorting things out, I finally understood everything that happened in the previous 5 years. "Jocelyn," my best friend suddenly called out to me, "Sawyer is walking this way." Looking up, I saw Sawyer surrounded by people, walking towards me step by step. The surrounding chatter immediately stopped. We grew up together since we were children. Our parents arranged a marriage for us since we were young. If someone bullied me, he would be the first to come out and protect me. Conversely, if he made a mistake and needed to be beaten, I would try my best to persuade the adults to forgive him. Before this, no one would have doubted that I was his favorite. But today on my birthday, he brought another woman. The thin Imogen leaned against him like a delicate flower. Sawyer whispered in her ear with a smile. Seeing me, Imogen's expression instantly became flustered and uneasy, and she quickly stepped forward. She bowed 90 degrees to me. It was exactly the same as what happened in the previous life. Even the tear hanging on her eyelashes was so similar. It was this innocent look that once confused Sawyer. Having witnessed all kinds of transactional marriages and big families since childhood, I never yearned for true love. Her appearance made me feel uncomfortable, but I didn't lose my mind. Even if Sawyer wanted to cancel the engagement, I didn't make a big fuss. I just considered our many years of friendship and offered a few words of advice. She's just a helpless child with no work experience, although you two are in love. But Grandpa will never agree to this marriage. This will only harm her. Why don't you let her wait outside first, until the future? There was an unspoken meaning in my words. When you are in control, everything will be easy to say. A few kind words saved her, but brought disaster for myself. In the previous life, when I saw her bowing, I immediately helped her up. This time I chose to watch coldly. When I found that no one paid attention to her, she decisively knelt down and kowtowed to me to admit her mistake. Every knock made a thumping sound. My friend quietly tugged at my sleeve to remind me. At this moment, there were many people at the scene paying attention to the situation here. I held the other party's hand to show comfort. What's the hurry? Imogen. Sawyer's face began to change color. In the blink of an eye, Imogen's forehead was already bleeding. Coupled with the tears flowing down at the same time, it made me seem even more soft-hearted. She hesitated between Sawyer and me, and finally insisted on continuing to kowtow. I leisurely picked up the red wine placed next to me and tasted it. I couldn't help but wonder, what extent can she perform? Facts have proved, Imogen is an excellent actress. All the weakness and helplessness she showed were all acting. Even the scene where she tried to end her life in the previous life was also an illusion. It was an empty and unmanned penthouse, and I heard her use a sweet voice to beg someone for help. Brother, if you don't use some tricks, how can you make President Sawyer value me? Brother, please help me again. Let's have some more intense means. Brother, I really like him. But due to the gap in status, Sawyer's family will definitely not accept such an arrangement. He promised to marry me in the first place, and now he must make some sacrifices to make him feel guilty. Please help me one last time. As long as you pretend to try to end your life, you can leave an unforgettable memory in his heart forever. What a perfect performance. Not only did she deceive Sawyer, but even I was deceived. Even all the media could not escape this trick. I once asked Sawyer why. Since I was born into this wealthy family, everyone has been respectful to me. But what they value is only wealth. Even you, if you don't have this background, do you think you would marry me? This question left me speechless for a moment. Indeed, if we two were born differently, it would be impossible for us to grow up together since childhood, and there would be no later story. Only Imogen. Only she treats me with sincerity, willing to give everything for me. Jocelyn, how can I refuse such sincerity? I was almost moved by his sweet words. As the daughter of the Jocelyn family, I have always been cautious in doing things. I need to take into account the feelings of my parents, but also consider the interests of the family. I really won't just hand over everything to one person casually. We overlooked another possibility, whether it was Sawyer being drugged, or he was really on the verge of death. Imogen, from the very beginning, was determined to climb this big tree. Enough! Sawyer shouted suddenly. The scene was silent. Imogen's body trembled slightly, and she looked up at me, her eyes full of pleading. Her eyes clearly conveyed a meaning. Because she broke my engagement and made me a laughingstock in the circle, she felt guilty. If I don't speak, she won't stop. Very good. Then let's continue. I raised my eyebrows slightly and continued to sip the red wine in my glass. Imogen gritted her teeth and was about to kneel down again. Sawyer suddenly took 2 steps forward, smack. He knocked down the wine glass in my hand. Jocelyn, don't go too far. Is this the upbringing of your Jocelyn family? Sawyer's face was stern, making everyone around him quiet down. He pulled up Imogen and gently stroked her forehead with distress. Jocelyn apologized to her. Apologize now, and we can pretend nothing happened. I almost laughed out loud. I blamed myself for being too naive at the time. After discovering Imogen's lies, I called Sawyer that night and told him everything I had seen. I told him to be careful of Imogen. The next day, Imogen died. Really died. The media said it was because she had no status and chose to end her own life. Sawyer said to me, "Thanks to your reminder, otherwise I would have been tricked by her." So many years have passed, and I always thought he had forgotten Imogen. After all, he hates being deceived the most. It wasn't until I was dying that I realized. The her he said he was deceived by was me. Jocelyn, are you mute? Imogen didn't do anything wrong. I was the one who wanted to break off the engagement. Apologize to her, and I won't hold you accountable for the injury on her head. I looked at Sawyer and couldn't help but laugh. I was really blind. I always thought he was a smart person. Are the elders inside? I turned my head and asked the waiter next to me. Then I walked in elegantly. Sawyer followed me closely behind. What are you going to do? Do you want to complain? I ignored him until I reached the door. He was still following me. Jocelyn, don't think you can be engaged to me just because you are the daughter of the Jocelyn family. I have already promised to marry Imogen, and it is impossible to marry you again. I glanced back at Sawyer. As he said, he was born high above. His life has been too smooth. He simply didn't realize what a competent wife meant to him. Perhaps because my eyes were too cold, Sawyer was stunned. Just in time to see the entrance, he said to him, "Jocelyn, what's wrong with you two? Why are you so inseparable?" The room was full of guests. I bowed forward. "Grandpa Theodore, today is my birthday, and I have a wish to tell you. Sawyer and Miss Imogen are in love, and I envy them. I don't want to be a stumbling block in their love. Grandpa Theodore, I want to break off my engagement with Sawyer." The room instantly fell silent. 2. Before evening, the news had already spread throughout the circle. It seemed that the marriage between the Jocelyn and Sawyer families was going to fall through. Previously, Sawyer had publicly stated in front of the media that he did not want to get married, and this matter had already caused a great uproar. Today, the eldest daughter of the Jocelyn family actually announced the termination of the engagement in front of everyone at her birthday banquet. It is said that Sawyer's face was very ugly at the time. The head of the Sawyer family directly picked up the teapot and smashed it at him, causing his head to bleed. Nonsense. Standing next to me, I was unfortunately splashed with water. "You're actually making such a scene outside," my father said angrily. "Canceling the engagement?" This matter was discussed between our family and the Sawyer family. "Do you think you can just refuse to get married if you don't want to?" I stood up straight, my eyes firm. "We are currently cooperating with the Sawyer family's company. If we cancel the engagement, what if they withdraw from the project? You have to go to the Sawyer family to apologize and say that you were just young and impulsive." "I'm not going," I replied, "no doubt." "You're not going? What do you want to do?" "Break off the engagement." "You?" My father pointed at me. "I think you have a problem with your brain." After speaking, he slammed the door and left. 11. Maybe I'm really a little crazy. If I hadn't experienced those things, I wouldn't have considered breaking off the engagement with Sawyer. Since childhood, I have been educated to put the interests of the family first and to repay the benefits I have enjoyed. Since marriage is inevitable sooner or later, acquaintances are more reliable than strangers. For the sake of development, we do need allies. And Sawyer is a good choice. His background is simple and easy to control, which is beneficial to the Jocelyn family. So at the beginning, when Sawyer mentioned the cooperation project, my father invested a lot of money without saying a word. But I didn't expect that this was a trap. Dealing with such a person will only lead to failure. "Jocelyn, what did that Sawyer kid say to you?" my best friend asked anxiously. In the past, he and I always chatted happily, but this time I only sent 4 words. "Enough is enough." I forced a smile. "Jocelyn." She was extremely nervous. "You must not let him go so easily." I interrupted her. "Let's talk about it later. I have something urgent to go out now." I took out the specially packaged small box from the pile of gifts. Inside was a jade necklace that I had bought at an auction half a year ago. I took the necklace, got up, put on my coat, and prepared to go out. "Mom, I'm going out to do some errands and will be back soon." I walked out of the room and headed for my car. After these few days, my attitude towards Sawyer has completely changed. The Jocelyn who still had a glimmer of hope for him is long dead, and all that remains is a person determined to take revenge. 12. The man in front of me was thin and pale, with a bright and alluring mole at the corner of his eye. He was very different from what I remembered. I was sizing him up, and at the same time, he was scrutinizing me. His gaze seemed casual. "Miss Jocelyn, long time no see. Still so beautiful and charming." His tone was calm. I also smiled and responded, "President Red is really good at talking." The corners of my mouth gochi a faint smile. Both of us were speaking polite words, and we both knew what was in our hearts. "The flowers by the window were sent by you, right?" He turned his head and glanced at them. "They look very beautiful." I put the gift box in the center of the table. "Did you receive the necklace I gave you?" I picked up the water glass and drank some water. He reached out to open the box, but I quickly pulled it back. His hand paused for a moment, and he didn't say anything in the face of my smile. 13. His name is Rhett. He is the son of the fourth uncle, and also Sawyer's cousin. I knew that this marriage could not be easily dissolved, but I also knew that it had to be dissolved. On the first night of my rebirth, I decided to find this person for help. His noble status, outstanding strength, and early death made him the best candidate. In a car accident at the age of 18, his health was greatly affected, and he also missed the inheritance right. He left this world at the age of 25. But there is no doubt that he is full of ambition for the Sawyer family. Although he never married, his heritage exceeded half of the company. It is impossible to imagine what he would have done if he had been healthy. "What do you mean?" Rhett asked, his dark eyes staring at me. "I hate fools the most." I raised my eyebrows and looked at him. "I hope to see some real ability proof before we cooperate." Rhett showed a real smile. His pale face looked a little better. He slowly raised his teacup and took a sip of water. 14. Joining hands with strangers seemed impossible in the past. But I am in urgent need of a shrewd partner at this moment. There is no reaction in the circle for the time being. The news circulating on the internet naturally disappeared within a few days. The outside world simply does not believe that the Jocelyn family's company will give up its relationship with the Sawyer family. Sawyer looked very happy. The old man had a headache when he saw him, so he took his girlfriend on a business trip. After leaving, he naturally wouldn't notice the increasingly close connection between the Jocelyn family's company and Rhett. Even if he was in the local area, he would not care about these changes. After all, the Jocelyn family's company will always help him through difficulties. Even the ordinary employee transfer within the company is unnoticed. The chat object on social software has become Rhett. Although he is not in good health and speaks less, he quickly gave a response. Suddenly one day, a new drama became very popular on the internet. A rich young master saved a poor girl, and the two fell in love and stayed together. The plot is too similar, so it quickly fermented and sparked discussions on the internet. Why can't ordinary people and rich people be together? If a person can't even be grateful, how can he manage a company well? Sawyer's desire to marry a little secretary is simply a good story. Overnight, Sawyer and Imogen became popular on the internet. Netizens are urging the Civil Affairs Bureau to move in quickly. So when Sawyer returned to City A to attend the company's new product launch, he held Imogen in front of him, looking very proud. 16. It's really a coincidence. They used public opinion and stock prices to force Grandpa Theodore to give in. And they also achieved 3 things with one stone. They cut off Sawyer's career prospects, blocked the development path of the Jocelyn family's company, and even Sawyer's relationship with Grandpa Theodore. What a good story. It's just a small trick to confuse the public. Grandpa Theodore would not have thought that the usually low-key Rhett would do such a thing. He would only think that these were all Sawyer's tricks. And Sawyer, in his excitement, probably thought that this was God's help. How is it? Not bad. That's all? I smiled. I asked someone to send a piece of high-quality tea cake as a return gift. Since you have received the benefits, you should also give back something more precious. And I added a sentence. President Sawyer, why not take advantage of the victory and pursue? Miss Jocelyn, have you thought about it? Of course I have thought about it. Since the cooperation has been decided, the first step after rebirth must not have any hesitation. 17. My best friend cursed Sawyer and Imogen's blatant show-off for 3 whole days. This time, there was no more discussion in the circle. Everyone believed that the engagement between the Jocelyn and Sawyer families would definitely be canceled. They were all waiting to see a good show. My engagement was indeed canceled, but the joke everyone wanted to see did not happen. It is said that the scene downstairs in the Sawyer family's company group building was particularly chaotic that day. Sawyer took the little secretary and the media into the conference room. At that time, Grandpa Theodore and my dad were discussing a cooperation project. When they saw them coming in, everyone stood up. The Jocelyn family has always been a prominent presence in City A and has never been insulted like this. Chairman Theodore, since Sawyer is so determined to demand the termination of the engagement, then let's abolish the marriage contract between our 2 families. After speaking, he led the people from the Jocelyn family's company out of the conference room in a mighty manner. Just because of a little secretary, it has come to this point. Grandpa Theodore was angry, but there was nothing he could do about it. However, just as the internet said, this incident may turn the Sawyer family and the Jocelyn family into enemies. Several families already want to marry the Jocelyn family. After losing the cooperation opportunity with the Jocelyn family, the strength of the Sawyer family will be greatly weakened, and the 2 major families are likely to turn against each other. Just when the situation was at a stalemate, someone appeared who surprised everyone. In fact, I also met with Rhett that day, dressed smartly. Although my dad looks serious and upright, he is actually very concerned about appearance. Therefore, the internet said that when that person appeared, he was outstanding in appearance like a fairy. After he sat down, everyone realized it. This is the genius Saunan, who was once infinitely glorious, but later lived in seclusion and was almost forgotten. Then his words were even more shocking. Grandpa, Uncle Quentin, I want to marry Miss Jocelyn. These words broke the deadlock at once. Grandpa Theodore remembered this extremely talented grandson. Although his health was not good, the current medical conditions are very good. My dad suddenly felt that compared to that brain-dead Sawyer, Rhett looked much more pleasing to the eye. The 2 elders reached a consensus in their eye contact. Only Sawyer. It is said that his expression at the time was very complicated, and he was almost unsteady on his feet in surprise. Before he could speak, I made an engagement with Rhett. Immediately afterwards, the 2 families quickly announced our engagement, and also determined the wedding date for Sawyer and Imogen at the same time. This matter came to an end. When the marriage news was released, I rarely felt happy. I didn't expect the first step to go so smoothly. It can be seen how important it is to choose the right cooperation partner. As soon as the marriage news was announced, Sawyer immediately came to the door to make trouble. He finally got his wish and can marry the person he loves. Why didn't he enjoy the joy of the new marriage first, but came to me to make trouble? I asked the servant to say to him, Sawyer, get out. He flew into a rage in the yard. Jocelyn, I think you're crazy. I kindly want to remind you that Rhett is a useless person. If you still know what is good or bad, it's best to find a way to cancel this engagement. Otherwise, you will have a hard time in the future. I ignored him and felt relaxed. I just opened the social software. When to start the next step? My teammates are indeed much more hardworking than the one outside. Reply, don't worry. Please enjoy the wonderful performance slowly. 18. Before Sawyer harmed me, he actually said a lot to me. At that time, it was too painful, and I couldn't remember many words. The most impressive thing is, if it weren't for you, because of your Jocelyn family, Imogen and I should have lived happily together. In this life without me, without the Jocelyn family, I want to see if he and Imogen can really stay together for a long time. The tea house is filled with a strong aroma. The overseas project has encountered problems. It is of course a good thing for President Xiao Sawyer to go there in person, but is it appropriate to bring this fiancé with him? What's inappropriate? Although this Miss Imogen has not yet officially become the daughter-in-law of the Sawyer family, the engagement has already been announced. She is still an outstanding talent in business administration and may be able to provide some useful help. There has never been a shortage of people in the company who are keen to talk about gossip. Is the good show you said here? President Xiao Sawyer brought his fiancée with him on a business trip overseas, which caused discussions among the company's employees for a while. I raised my eyebrows and drank tea. Of course, it's far more than that. Jocelyn is such a beautiful and generous girl. It's fortunate that some people can't see this beauty, Rhett said with a smile. I looked up. He is indeed handsome, especially when he smiles. The small mole at the corner of his eye adds infinite charm. In the past few months, we have often enjoyed tea together, and we have gotten along very well. But if you move your eyes down a little, you will notice that he is indeed thin. Noticing that I was watching him, Rhett gently poured tea for me. This rich young master is not lacking in elegance despite doing business. It's exceptionally quiet today. He poured tea while glancing at me. It's not that I really have nothing to say. I was thinking about Sawyer's sentence, Rhett is a useless person. Hey, I grabbed his collar. Can you have children? Rhett's eyes suddenly became deep. He slowly put down the teapot in his hand. He raised his eyelids, his eyes were deep, and the red at the corner of his eyes was particularly obvious. He gently pinched my chin. Want to try? 19. I really plan to try. If Rhett has no descendants, wouldn't my series of plans be in vain? However, this kind of thing can't always be done in a tea house, right? A month later, the scene I arranged for Rhett finally took place. Sawyer went abroad to handle overseas projects, accompanied by the inseparable little secretary. Unexpectedly, they actually provoked the local forces there, and the other party released harsh words to teach them a lesson. In desperation, Sawyer sent someone to send Imogen back to China first. I thought that only Imogen would return to China, but who knew that Sawyer would also come back? Imogen lied to Sawyer that she was scared and asked him to accompany her back to China. As a result, Sawyer was led by the nose and returned to City A. They have already threatened to teach us a lesson, and we are almost unable to survive there. How can we leave Sawyer alone there? In the previous life, Imogen explained pitifully to the company's colleagues. A lonely girl who has just graduated and has no one to rely on is irrefutable. Since ancient times, even if a general is defeated, he must keep his flag from being lost. But this time Sawyer chose to work abroad by himself, not only offended the local bigwigs, but also left without saying goodbye. Moreover, those people were just verbally threatening and scaring people. Maybe there was still room for negotiation. In the previous life, this matter was suppressed by my father. The bigwig happened to have a good relationship with my father, and Sawyer had already received the news before leaving the airport. That night, he was stopped by my father and sent back again, so that the matter was not made a big deal. But in this life, my father is unwilling to help him cover up anymore. As soon as he took Sawyer out of the airport, the Sawyer family's company group exploded. Everyone's dissatisfaction with Sawyer spread instantly. Grandpa Theodore was furious and scolded Sawyer for being a stupid grandson in the family. In fact, for this kind of public opinion, finding someone to take the lead in fanning the flames can control the situation. But this kind of thing cannot be done openly. It was only when Sawyer realized that in the past 6 months, his subordinates had been replaced by I don't know how many batches. Except for Imogen, he didn't even leave a confidant. He couldn't bring himself to ask others for help. He had to watch the external criticism continue to ferment. Ready to start my next move, I sent a message to Rhett. 20. I'm going to expose Imogen's fake suicide attempt. Sawyer has always firmly believed that Imogen's feelings for him are pure and without any impurities. In the previous life, when she tricked him into returning to China together, he just sighed faintly afterwards. Imogen is just too concerned about me. This time, no one will clean up the mess for him. Can he still say that? Rhett had already planted many informants in Sawyer's company. With a gentle push, Imogen will reveal her flaws. This is not a difficult task. Originally, I wanted to focus on that overseas project and give her a good scare. But before I could even take action, Someone couldn't wait to jump out. I heard that night, Sawyer was in an extremely depressed mood because he had been attacked by netizens recently, his subordinates complained, and his grandfather blamed him. He hadn't returned to the place where he lived with Imogen for 5 consecutive days. The office building had long been equipped with many high-definition cameras, covering all directions. That evening, Imogen really sat outside the railing crying and saying, "It's all because I have dragged down President Sawyer. I am willing to atone for my sins. President Sawyer, I will always love you, and I will repay your kindness in the next life." After speaking, she threw herself downstairs. The affectionate Sawyer naturally grabbed her in time. I don't know if it was because she moved too slowly, or Sawyer used too much force. The result was that he fell down himself, and Imogen was hung on the outer wall by a rope. Fortunately, someone called the police in advance, and soft cushions were laid downstairs. I heard that Sawyer's expression when he saw Imogen hanging on the building was very wonderful at that time. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it. Since then, the Sawyer family has not had a peaceful day. Before long, Sawyer started clamoring to break off the engagement again. 21. My mother told me since I was a child that as a woman of status, the thing you can't believe most in love is love. When you love someone, you can only give 7 points, and you have to leave 3 points for yourself. Didn't Sawyer have anyone teach him these principles since he was a child? Perhaps it was because he was too spoiled at home. He is the son of the eldest house, and has always been deeply loved by the family. When his father was still alive, he was the most chung-sun in the entire family. It wasn't until his father passed away that Rhett gradually emerged. Sawyer, who was born with all the resources, naturally believed that everyone and everything should revolve around him. Whoever he wants to marry must be married, and whoever he doesn't want to marry should not force him to do so. This time, he messed up another marriage and angered his grandfather to the point of being hospitalized in the ICU. The whole city is discussing this matter. How will people in the company view this President Sawyer, who is about to hold a wedding, but suddenly announces the termination of the engagement? Grandpa Theodore, who had just been discharged from the hospital, immediately told him to get out. Sawyer ran to the house I rented outside. At this time, I had just tried the new bed with Rhett and was lying down to rest, not wanting to move at all. But the security guard let him come up and knock on the door, making a loud noise. When I opened the door, I saw Sawyer's face with extremely complex emotions. 22. Speaking of Rhett, he does have an arrogant temperament. Seeing that I was about to get up, he insisted on biting my neck twice. Obviously, Sawyer saw it. His eyes were both surprised and a little obscure, and it took a long time before he found his voice and asked, "Jocelyn, you guys?" I straightened my collar and looked at the uninvited guest. "What's wrong with being with my fiancé?" Sawyer was immediately angry. "You're not married yet, and you're so shameless?" "Brother, you can't say that." Red in the room spoke. "You've done everything with that secretary. Then what's going on with you two now?" Sawyer didn't expect that someone was still in the room, and his face turned red and white for a while. "I'm not like you, breaking up with this one for a while, and breaking up with another one for a while. I will be determined to the end with whoever I like." At this time, Sawyer's face was completely white. "Another reminder, you shouldn't call her Jocelyn. You should call her sister-in-law." Sawyer's lips trembled for a long time, and he couldn't speak. I thought he would change his words and call out, but he didn't. "It's really boring." I closed the door and left. "Jocelyn," Sawyer shouted, blocking the door. "Jocelyn, Imogen is lying to me. She's the one who made us like this. Jocelyn, listen to me. I had a dream a few days ago, and I dreamed that we two were married." "Wife." Rhett directly changed his address. "The quilt is a bit cold, I'm weak, and I feel cold." "Sawyer, do you want to go in and talk to your brother?" Sawyer didn't speak. I closed the door. 23. Sawyer seemed to have been stimulated by something, and he actually got sick after going back. There was nothing interesting to see from the Sawyer family, but our family is busy preparing for my wedding with Rhett, and there are many things to do. This day, I was calculating the dowry when a guest came uninvited. Imogen looked sad when she saw me, crying like a tearful person. "Miss Jocelyn, please go and see President Sawyer." I moved to the side, avoiding the corner of her skirt that she almost grabbed. "Miss Jocelyn, President Sawyer's condition is very serious. He can't wake up and always calls your name in his dreams. If you go to see him, maybe he will wake up." I looked at her condescendingly, not wanting to pay attention to her. "Miss Jocelyn, you and President Sawyer grew up together since childhood, and you were each other's first love. Please go and see him." Imogen kept bowing. I was too greedy. "As long as Miss Jocelyn agrees, I am willing to be just President Sawyer's girlfriend and will never cause you any trouble. Miss Jocelyn, I beg you." My brows furrowed, and an angry rebuke came from beside me. "What are the security guards doing? How can they let this kind of person come in casually?" Since the servants at home scolded Sawyer as a dog, everyone has become more casual in their speech. "Security, throw her out." After Imogen was driven away, she never entered this door again. Originally, this matter was not worth mentioning, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt that something was wrong. Sawyer is sick and still calling my name? He shouldn't have such feelings for me. Besides, last time he said that he dreamed of marrying me. Could it be that he really? Anything is possible in a new life. But what if he remembers the past? How should I continue my original plan for the third step? 24. At the beginning, I promised Rhett that it would only take 3 steps to help him regain what he deserved. In the previous life, I died so miserably, and I must not let Sawyer become the heir of the Sawyer family in peace. Even take over the entire group. I arranged for someone to keep an eye on the news from the hospital. Now I know that Sawyer has woken up, and everything seems to be normal. Nothing special happened in the Sawyer family. Sawyer did not clamor for the termination of the engagement again, but he postponed his wedding. This made me uneasy. With Sawyer's temperament, he will never give up until the last moment. This time the postponement of the wedding will it be because he also realized that the situation was not in his favor. According to my plan, this third step will be executed on a certain night a month later. That day, Grandpa Theodore passed away quietly. 25. Generally speaking, the night when the head of a family passes away is extremely crucial. But it is different for Sawyer, because he had no opponents before. In the previous life, Grandpa Theodore passed away in his sleep and was only discovered in the morning. Sawyer took over everything effortlessly. But in this life, there are me and Rhett. As long as my third step is steady and accurate, it is not difficult to kick Sawyer out of the game. I have prepared everything for what follows. I had an in-depth conversation with my father. I joined hands with Rhett to plan. The old house is still as calm as water. Sawyer went to and from get off work as usual, while Imogen kept making noise. Soon a month passed like this. When night fell, I sent a message to Sawyer. Meet at Wushan Park, Xiqing at 12 o'clock in the evening. 26. Actually, Sawyer and I also have many pleasant memories. Before he met Imogen, every birthday was him set off fireworks with me. When I was young, I didn't know that wishes should be made silently in my heart. Every time I said it loudly, the things I wanted would be sent to my side from Sawyer's house within a few days. When I grew up and didn't say it, Sawyer could also learn what I liked through my friends. When I arrived at Wudong Mountain Park, he was already waiting there. The first time I saw his eyes, I knew I guessed right. President Xiao Sawyer's eyes have become as firm and confident as those of the previous power holders. Jocelyn, we haven't been here for a long time. He stared at the bottomless cliff in front of him. At this moment, there will naturally be no fireworks to illuminate this darkness. Remember when you slid down that small hillside? He pointed not far away. You cried so hard. I was the one who pulled you up. President Sawyer really remembers clearly. I smiled. I have forgotten these. So you're so eager to stay away from me? What else can I do? I glanced at him. Do you want to wait to be killed again? Sawyer's eyes raised. His tone sank. Jocelyn, I misunderstood you. The culprit is actually Preston. This is Sawyer's most trusted assistant. Later I found out the truth that Imogen's best friend was the victim of that project. In order to take revenge, she changed the rope before pretending to end her life, and framed you. I believe in your innocence, but I didn't save her in time. She actually ended her own life. I don't have the thought to listen to the complicated situation of those years. Even if you know the truth, so what? What shouldn't be done, he has already done too much. Even if she chose to end her life after hearing my suggestion not to get married immediately, so what? I coldly looked at Sawyer. The final decision is always in your hands. You wavered after seeing Grandpa Theodore's firm opposition, right? But because of my reminder, my family was destroyed. I thought, I don't want to listen anymore. The early spring night is a bit chilly. Sawyer looked at me with deep eyes and suddenly smiled. I know where the problem is. He dragged me forward and stopped at the edge of the cliff. Unexpectedly, he also brought Imogen, who was tied up, and hung her on the edge of the cliff. Imogen's eyes were already swollen and red, and when she saw us, she let out a vague whimper, and tears kept flowing down. Those who betray me deserve to be punished. Almost instantly, Sawyer cut off the rope hanging Imogen. Without any mercy. 27. This is the so-called love, he said. The person in front of him is not just the Sawyer from 5 years ago. When he killed me, his face was still pale. But now the action of pushing people into the abyss is so calm and composed. I clenched my fists. Are you satisfied? I moved my gaze away. Jocelyn, I really know I was wrong. I have been regretting every day these years. I am for you. Don't say it. I really don't want to hear him say another word. Sawyer's eyes dimmed again. Then he laughed. 2 o'clock in the middle of the night. You are waiting for this moment, right? This time, in another time and space, is the exact moment when the forensic doctor announced the death of Grandpa Theodore. Jocelyn, do you think that without the support of the Jocelyn family, can a disabled Rhett defeat me? Today, I will let you see clearly who is the ultimate winner. Sawyer dragged me into the car and went straight to the ancestral home of the Sawyer family. As soon as he stepped into the gate of the ancestral home, Sawyer's phone rang. After connecting the phone, the other side seemed to be telling him the news of Theodore's death. At this time, whether it is the key personnel inside the Sawyer family or the Sawyer family's company group, they are all firmly controlled by Sawyer. The servants in the mansion looked flustered, but when they saw Sawyer, they all bowed their heads respectfully. In front of the old man's bedroom, it was crowded with people. The bodyguards and thugs brought by Sawyer were all over the old house. Seeing Sawyer's arrival, everyone said in unison, "President Sawyer." The outcome is clear at a glance. Seeing this scene, Rhett was restrained by 2 bodyguards and could not move, and the subordinates I arranged for Rhett were also subdued. It's really embarrassing. At this time, Sawyer stretched out his hand to me. "Follow me, my wife." I just looked at him. Sawyer got closer, his tone full of sincerity. "Jocelyn, I want you to be the happiest woman in the world." His eyes swept across the crowd around him, and finally fell on a bunch of lilies by the window. The opportunity is rare. Looking at Sawyer's eyes, he gently tilted his head and asked, "Did you really win?" Sawyer's eyebrows frowned slightly, and he vigilantly observed the surrounding environment, with a trace of doubt in his eyes. Where are the old man's confidants? Were they discovered? At this moment, a stern rebuke sounded from behind. Sawyer looked at the figure standing at the door with crutches in disbelief. It was Grandpa Theodore who should have passed away. In fact, I had already set up the 3rd step, and it was not disturbed by Sawyer's rebirth at all. After all, people's hearts are complicated, and most people tend to use their own standards to guess other people's intentions. This is especially true for this power holder who has experienced countless storms in the shopping mall. In his opinion, tonight must be a key moment when I join forces with the Jocelyn family to support Rhett to seize the inheritance rights. Little did he know that I would not make a decision according to what he thought. From the beginning to the end, the real plan was far from his imagination. The old man was very friendly to the Jocelyn family. After learning that his fate was destined to end on this night, why not start preparing early? What's more, Sawyer only rebirthed for a month, and may not be very clear about the fact that Grandpa Theodore's regular medical treatment and recuperation have significantly improved his health over the past 6 months. In fact, all actions were designed to make the old man feel dissatisfied with Sawyer. The first and second steps were designed in this way. The third step is to create false information to make Sawyer think that we need to use the power of the Jocelyn family to support Rhett to replace him. Once he notices the clues and takes action, it will be exactly what I want. All the accumulated resentment is enough to promote the final result. Of course, the successful implementation of all this is also thanks to the development of modern medical technology. Otherwise, it would be really impossible to arrange such a game. Therefore, in the initial conception, even if Sawyer had not traveled through time and returned, a fake death scene would be arranged tonight. In order to confuse him, I also specially invited him to Wudong Mountain for a play to distract him. If he stayed at home, he would probably see through the truth soon. In addition, it is worth mentioning that today's events have also been agreed by the old man himself, because he firmly believed that what Rhett said was true. When he was told that Sawyer wanted to seize the property, he decided to test the depth of the water. When we meet again 3 months later, it will be the time for prison visits. The seasons change, and the summer rain is continuous. The scene is strikingly similar to that day. The detention room is humid, cold, and bone-chilling. Compared with his healthy appearance, the current Sawyer is much thinner, wearing shackles on his hands, sitting behind the glass in a thin shirt. He shouldn't have fallen into this situation, but his means to consolidate his position were extremely cruel. It made the old man completely heartbroken, and he was even unwilling to meet and talk with him before his death. Even with the best treatment, he could not stop the disease from coming, and finally only won a 90-day extension. Seeing me appear in front of him, his eyes suddenly burst with hope, trying to touch my cheek through the glass, but was ruthlessly blocked by the cold barrier. "Jocelyn, can't you forgive me?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. We have all gained rebirth. This is the second chance that fate has given us. I don't think it's entirely true. Perhaps it's just that some innocent souls have not been able to rest in peace. After saying these words, I found that the light in the other person's eyes gradually extinguished. "Do you remember why we haven't had a son yet?" Hearing this, the other person's gaze shifted to my lower abdomen. "Because when I married you, you needed to use my family's power to stabilize your position. It was not suitable to conceive a child in that environment. It was the right choice to wait until Sawyer completely controlled the situation before considering this issue. And my family has also done their best to help. But in fact, we did have a child." After hearing this sentence, I saw his pupil shrink suddenly. When I fell in a pool of blood, there was already a 3-month-old life in my belly. Why? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I leaned closer and stared at him. "A man like you is not worthy of having offspring to continue the family line." As the voice fell, the person in front of him became paler and paler until it was almost pale. His face was filled with unprecedented grief. He calmly said the last sentence. "This is the price you should pay." The rain is getting heavier and heavier. Outside, Rhett was waiting for me. "Be careful, the road is slippery." He lowered his body and said to me, "Come on, I'll carry you on my back." I took the opportunity to lie on his back. Although he has become much thinner due to illness during this period, I still chose to let him help. Although there was not much warmth on his body, the only place where I could feel warmth was his neck. But leaning on this place made me feel at ease. Perhaps it was because we had been getting along relatively well recently, and he rarely asked why. Tears welled up in my eyes unconsciously. "Someone loves you," he suddenly said. "Is there a possibility that I am working hard to make money just to ensure that you have a better life?" Hearing this, I stood up instantly. "Hey, you start to show off your feelings when you have achieved your goal? Do you want me to give in?" "Well," Rhett hummed softly, his nose a little sore. "You found out." On the day Rhett took over the company, he transferred all the shares to my name. As agreed before, we jointly managed the Sawyer family's company group, each with half of the shares. But I seem to have misjudged him. He has no enthusiasm for being the chairman of the board. First, he pretended to be unwell and lacking energy, and let my father act as the agent. Later, he simply didn't even step into the company's gate. In fact, I am quite willing to discuss work with him. It feels great to communicate with smart people. Half a year later, I became pregnant. He paid less and less attention to the company's affairs. Often, wherever I went, he followed. When asked why, he said that with my father-in-law around, there is nothing to worry about. Alas, it's a pity that I used to praise him for being positive and enterprising. The child was born smoothly, a boy. Rhett was very happy and hugged his son all day long, reluctant to let go. When the child went to kindergarten, I thought about having a daughter. But unexpectedly, Rhett directly refused. "My body can't take it," he said. "How is that possible? With his usual energy, even if he is sick, he can't be stopped, right?" I understand that it was the heavy bleeding during childbirth that scared him. Since he disagreed, let it be. I started urging Rhett to go back to work at the company. My dad is old. How can he take care of the affairs of two companies at the same time? In fact, I am not really interested in business with half of the shares. It's just that once bitten by a snake, you are afraid of the well rope for 10 years. 2 years later, I became pregnant again. The days seemed to have never been so fast. Sometimes Rhett would ask me, "How many years do you think I have left to live?" Look, this guy knows everything in his heart. Although he doesn't mention it, he is very clear about my abnormal behavior. Every time he opens his mouth, I always answer with a smile. "Probably tomorrow. Prepare quickly. In case you are gone one day, I plan to use your money to raise a group of young men." You know, I can do this kind of thing. The second child was born in the autumn of the 6th year, a lovely little princess. Rhett was overjoyed and said that he would leave all the family property to his daughter in the future. I ignored him. In fact, the current Rhett has lived 3 years longer than in his previous life. I didn't even feel sad. At first, I planned to let him leave this world and leave behind his children. And a situation like Rhett, where I don't need to do it myself, is simply perfect. In the autumn of the 7th year, Rhett took me to enjoy the maple leaves. The mountains and plains are full of red, full of vitality and vigor. On the way down the mountain, I silently held his hand. I sincerely hoped to freeze time at this moment.